できた。危ない。
Good evening. My name is Fernando Tora, and the reason I sent this email to Prater is because I want to share something very, very disturbing that happened to me 2 years ago, back when I worked as a truck driver. In fact, I should mention that this incident is the main reason I decided to quit, even though the pay wasn't bad at all. I thought, no amount of money is worth risking my life like this. Before this, I had already experienced a few dangerous situations on the road, attempted robberies and similar incidents. But the experience I'm about to tell you went far beyond my limits. It was something so strange that I still don't know if it was paranormal or simply something deeply sinister. One thing is certain, it was so terrifying that I completely lost any desire to keep working as a truck driver. I remember that last trip as if it had happened yesterday. I set out in a late afternoon and was supposed to reach my destination at 7 a.m. the next day, so I had a long night ahead of me. I stopped at my favorite taco stand for dinner and ate on the road while listening to music and watching the sun disappear until it was completely dark. Everything was going normally. This was almost a routine route for me, so I didn't even need GPS. But I didn't count on there being a serious accident involving several cars. Because of that accident, the police were diverting all traffic to take an alternate route. Nobody was being allowed through, and it looked like the delay would be long. They still hadn't even removed the bodies from the scene. I had no choice. I turned on my GPS to find the fastest way back to the main road, since I still had to deliver my cargo by 7 a.m. The GPS showed me a detour, a dirt road that would only add about 10 minutes to my trip. I didn't think twice and headed toward it. When I arrived, I saw the dirt road was actually in good condition, wide enough for my truck with no issues. It was completely deserted. While I drove, I admired the view, the silhouettes of mountains in the distance, stars shining brighter than usual. But then, I noticed my phone signal had vanished. The music stopped, and I could no longer see my location on the GPS. I was a bit concerned, but I thought the signal would return soon. It didn't. I kept driving, expecting to reach the highway soon. After all, the GPS had said it was only 10 minutes away. But after 20 minutes, there was still no sign of the highway. I began to feel uneasy and thought about turning back. That's when I saw a light in the distance. As I got closer, I saw it was a small concrete house with a single light on. My first thought was how strange it was for someone to live in such an isolated place, but I didn't get a bad feeling, not yet. I pulled over, got out of the truck, and walked toward the house to ask if the road really led to the highway or if I should turn back. The windows had open curtains. Not wanting to knock and startle anyone, I decided to peek inside first to see if someone was there. What I saw froze me in place. Inside, 2 men and a woman sat on top of a large table. In front of them was a massive pig, still alive, squealing in agony. Its stomach had been cut open, and they were tearing into it with their bare hands, eating desperately while covered in blood. The scene was so grotesque, so unreal, that I couldn't even process it. I stood there in shock, unable to move, make a sound, or even breathe. Then the woman looked straight at me. Moments later, both men turned to look as well. Slowly, the 3 of them climbed down from the table, sat in chairs, picked up utensils, and calmly continued eating the pig, never breaking eye contact, smiling at me the entire time. That was enough. I bolted back to my truck, started it, and sped away as fast as the engine would allow, retracing my path. My mind was racing with questions, but fear was the only thing keeping me going. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see them chasing me, but no one followed. Minutes later, I finally reached the main highway. My phone signal returned. The first thing I did was call a friend, another trucker, to tell him what had just happened. He could hardly believe it. He tried to calm me down, telling me the fear would pass and I'd think differently later. But I told him I was done. I wasn't going to risk my life like this again. When I returned to my city, I told my wife everything. She was shocked and supported my decision to quit immediately. She had always hated how dangerous trucking was, and this only confirmed her fears. I quickly found another job, but I still can't erase the disturbing image from my mind. I don't know if those people were even human. They looked human, but they didn't act like it. I'll never know who they were or why they were doing what they were doing, and I have no desire to find out. There are strange things out there, things most of us know nothing about. Take care on the roads, and don't make the same mistake I did. Never take an unfamiliar shortcut just to save time. In the end, it could cost you far more than you expect. Good evening. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Chase Casencio, and I worked as a truck driver for approximately 15 years. I worked for a construction materials company, and the company itself provided me with a cargo truck. During all that time, I made very good friends with my colleagues. Many times, I would run into them on the road, and we would chat during breaks or when we stopped at food stands. With that context, I will begin telling you this story, one that I consider paranormal, as do my friends and family who know about it. One day, I set out to deliver a load to another city along with a colleague. It was a long trip, which is why we went together, that way we could get there faster by taking turns driving while the other slept. Everything went very well on the way there. We delivered the material and immediately started heading back to our city. But in the early hours of the morning, while we were on the highway, something very strange and unexplainable happened. I was driving, and my colleague was sleeping in the sleeper berth. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning. I was listening to the radio to keep myself entertained so the trip wouldn't feel so heavy. That's when my colleague woke up and told me he badly needed to go to the bathroom. The problem was that we were far from any gas stations or towns. According to the map on my phone, we were still about an hour away from the next gas station. I had no choice but to pull over so he could go relieve himself in the woods. I told him not to take too long, since the area we were in was somewhat dangerous. He said he'd be quick and walked into the brush until I could no longer see him. I waited in the truck with the radio on, listening to a news program, when suddenly the signal cut out completely. I grabbed my phone to pass the time, but it also had no signal, not even a single bar. This struck me as strange, since less than a minute earlier I had used it to send a message, and it had gone through with almost full signal. It was strange for the connection to suddenly drop out like that, but I didn't think too much about it. After all, we were on the open road, and that kind of thing can happen. I glanced outside several times to see if my colleague was coming back, but there was no sign of him. He was taking too long, and I started to feel very exposed sitting there, especially without any signal. At that point, I was about to get out to go look for him, when I saw him walking back from the woods. I rolled down the window and yelled jokingly, asking if he had a stomach bug and making other silly comments. But he didn't even smile, which was unusual, since he was always cheerful. He just kept walking until he climbed into the passenger seat. This was odd to me, because it was still his turn to sleep. He had only rested about an hour so far. I thought he'd go back to the sleeper berth, but he didn't. Instead, I started the truck and we drove off. I asked him if he wasn't going to sleep, suggesting he should take advantage of the time since he'd be driving once the sun came up. But he told me he neither needed nor wanted to sleep. His attitude was what really struck me. His tone was curt and cold, completely unlike him. I asked if everything was okay, because I genuinely wanted to know what had happened to make him act that way. His only answer was, "Everything is fine." He kept his eyes fixed straight ahead. Sometimes he'd look upward, then back at the road, but never once did he glance at me. The phone signal came back a few minutes after we left that place. I was relieved, because the silence between us was making me uncomfortable. I turned the radio back on and listened to the news, leaving him alone since it was obvious he didn't want to talk. We traveled the rest of the way in silence. Hours passed, and it was nearly dawn, almost his turn to drive. This worried me, since he had barely slept, and I didn't feel comfortable going to sleep in the berth knowing he'd be driving in that condition. So I stopped at a gas station to buy us some coffee. I asked if he wanted to get down to make his coffee and stretch his legs, since it was almost his turn at the wheel. But he said he didn't want coffee and wasn't getting out. The situation was becoming stranger by the minute, but I decided to take a break from it all. I got out, went to the bathroom, and tried to clear my head. While I was in the restroom, my phone rang. It was my colleague, the same one who was supposed to be sitting in my truck. I thought maybe he had changed his mind and wanted me to buy him something. But as soon as I answered, I heard him yelling at me, demanding to know how I could have left him alone in that place without checking on him. I had no idea what he was talking about. I asked him to calm down and explain. In an angry tone, he said, "You know exactly what I mean. Last night, you left me out there in the woods. I think I passed out or something, because I woke up lying on the ground an hour ago. A man just helped me, and I'm already on my way back to the city. How could you leave me there without checking why I was taking so long?" I swear, I was speechless. My heart started pounding. I thought maybe he was playing a prank on me, so I ran out of the restroom back to my truck, but there was no one there. Not a single trace of my colleague, or whatever it was that had been riding with me. I called him back, asking if what he'd just told me was true. He was furious, saying that I was pretending to be innocent, which only made him angrier. He told me that anything could have happened to him out there, unconscious and alone. I tried to explain what had happened from my perspective, but after hearing me out, he just gave a cynical laugh and hung up. He clearly didn't believe me. We didn't speak again for several years after that. Later, I had problems with the company because he filed a complaint. I almost lost my job, but thankfully I wasn't fired because of my long track record and good reputation. They knew I was trustworthy and always made my deliveries on time and in perfect condition. Still, I never found out who or what I had actually let into my truck. Something took my friend's exact form and even his voice. To this day, I have no idea what happened. It was all extremely strange, especially considering the sudden loss of signal in that area and the fact that my real colleague says he doesn't remember anything after going into the woods. The last thing he recalls is relieving himself, then nothing until the next morning when he woke up lying on the ground, confused and with a severe headache. No matter how much my friends and family have tried to come up with an explanation, there is none, only paranormal theories. It still gives me chills just thinking about it. Whatever it was that climbed into my truck, it stayed with me for hours. Hello, Prater and community. This time, I would like to share a paranormal story that happened to my uncle during one of his many trips as a truck driver. He gave me permission to tell it, but asked me not to mention his name. He tells this story at every family gathering because it is something truly shocking, and for many, hard to believe. But it really happened. I say this with certainty because my uncle is a very serious man. He doesn't joke about things like this, and when he tells it, you can see the fear on his face, as if reliving it gives him a deeply unsettling feeling. As I mentioned, my uncle has worked his whole life as a truck driver. In fact, he is about to retire. This happened in 2007, on one of the many trips he made. He says he was driving calmly down the highway. It was already late at night, about 1 a.m. He was on the phone with my aunt, and they were arguing over some small household issues. She was upset because he hadn't done a few things she asked before leaving. Suddenly, my uncle almost lost control of the wheel when, out of nowhere, a woman appeared running toward him in the middle of the road. He hit the brakes hard, and his phone fell to the floor. He didn't even think about picking it up to answer my aunt, who was still on the line, worried and asking what had happened, because his full attention was on the woman standing in front of his truck. She was crying and begging for help. My uncle got out of the truck and asked if she was okay, since he had almost run her over. But all she kept saying was, "Help my baby. Please, help her." She was crying uncontrollably. My uncle asked where her baby was and what had happened. The woman told him her car was farther ahead, that she had been in an accident, and that her baby was trapped in the car seat. She begged him to help get her out. My uncle immediately agreed and offered to give her a ride in the truck so they could get there faster. Still sobbing, the woman got into the passenger seat. He was nervous. My aunt kept calling back, but he hung up so he could call emergency services. Apparently, no one had yet arrived to help the woman and her child. The dispatcher told him it would take about 20 minutes for help to get there. The woman, still crying, pointed out where her car was. It had gotten stuck among some trees, which had luckily prevented it from falling into a ravine, but it was so far down that it wasn't visible from the road. That's why no one had called for help yet. At that moment, all he could think about was saving the little girl. The adrenaline was so strong that he didn't even turn to check if the woman was following him or if she had stayed in the truck. He just ran down to the car. When he reached it, he saw the baby in the back seat, crying. But when he looked toward the driver's seat, he froze. The entire front of the car was completely destroyed, and in the driver's seat was what appeared to be the body of a woman wearing the exact same clothes, with the same hair color as the woman who had flagged him down moments earlier. My uncle was overwhelmed with chills. He was certain it was her, but he didn't want to look closely. Her body was in terrible condition, and he didn't want that image burned into his memory. His only focus was getting the baby out. He managed to free her. She didn't have a single scratch. He carried her back to the truck and kept her safe there until the authorities arrived. By then, the woman was nowhere to be found. He finally answered my aunt's calls. She had been calling non-stop, worried sick. He told her he was fine, then explained what was going on. When the ambulance and 2 police patrols arrived, my uncle explained everything. Of course, the officers had a hard time believing him. But the paramedics confirmed the woman had been dead for several hours, and it was already 2 a.m. They estimated the accident had happened in the afternoon. My uncle gave his statement and handed the baby over to the authorities, who said they would try to locate any family members to care for her. Then he left the scene, more shaken than ever. He says he cried the entire way. It was something that marked him for life. Just remembering the woman's anguished face still keeps him up at night, even after so many years. He hopes the baby, now a young woman, is doing well and living with her family. He has no doubt that the poor woman's spirit couldn't rest until she knew her daughter was safe from the danger of being trapped and unseen in that place. Let's continue. Hello everyone, my daughter convinced me to share this paranormal story that happened to me some time ago, and thinking about it now, it's definitely worth telling. It was truly terrifying, and even to this day, when I remember it, those same chills from that night return to me. First of all, my name is Lucas Harris, and I've been working as a truck driver in United States of America for 20 years. I remember I had just bought that truck. It was my very first trip in it. My old one had broken down in many ways. It was very old and had taken me on countless trips over the years. So my wife suggested I buy another one, even if it was used, at least more modern than the one I had. That time, I got a job delivering materials to another city about 5 hours from where I lived. It was the perfect moment to try out my new truck, which I had worked so hard to buy. I was excited. I left around 5 in the afternoon. The sky was already very cloudy, and it had started to rain, but I still had to do my job. The strange things began the moment I climbed into that truck. All the time, I felt a tingling at the back of my neck. Hard to explain, but it was like someone was breathing right behind me, their breath hitting my skin. I turned around out of instinct, but of course, no one was there. I also started to get goosebumps and shivers. I thought maybe it was the cold, but I didn't feel cold at all. The windows were closed. I even turned on the heater, but it didn't help. This wasn't cold, it was an unshakable chill running through my body. I couldn't stop feeling that someone was exhaling on the back of my neck. I turned around so many times that I almost drove off the road. Instead of feeling excited about my new truck, I began to feel anxious, even depressed for no reason. Night fell, and I just wanted to reach my destination, finish my work, and go home. To calm myself down, I decided to stop at a small roadside food stand. I'd been there before. It's popular among truckers, and sometimes we meet there to eat or chat. I got out to order food, and soon a good friend of mine, also a trucker, arrived. He smiled, greeted me, and asked how I was. I told him I was working, otherwise I wouldn't have left home with the truck. We laughed, but then he asked me something that left me confused. "Oh, so you brought your son to work with you?" I told him no and asked why he thought that. He looked serious and said that when he parked his truck next to mine, he saw a boy sitting in my passenger seat. The boy had waved to him, but didn't respond when my friend waved back. He assumed it was my son, since he had never met him. I asked if he was joking, but his face was serious. He swore it was true. We went to my truck together. I opened the door, nervous, but there was no one inside. I had locked the doors when I got out, so no child could have entered. My friend looked uneasy, touching his head as if he couldn't believe it. He kept swearing that he clearly saw a boy sitting there. I told him I believed him, especially after remembering all the strange sensations I had felt on the way. When I told him, he asked if the truck was new. I said yes, and that it was my first trip with it. He told me I should get it blessed, because there might be some kind of entity inside. I've never believed in ghosts or anything like that, but he kept insisting. Then he asked me who I had bought the truck from. That's when I remembered. The man I bought it from was selling it urgently because he needed money for his young son's funeral. My friend stared at me with a look that said he had just figured something out. I told him ghosts don't exist. He didn't argue, he just looked at me with pity, put a hand on my shoulder, and repeated that I should get the truck blessed if I wanted to keep using it. After that trip, that's exactly what I did. I called the priest from our church, and he blessed it. I swear, from that moment on, I never again felt that horrible sensation from the first trip. Nothing strange ever happened again. Still, to this day, I have trouble accepting that there might have been a presence in my truck. I've always been skeptical, but I haven't been able to find another explanation. What do you think? Could it have been that boy?